Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. We've got Senator Wayne Harper with us, Senate District 16. Nice to have you back, Wayne.
Thank you. It's always good to be with you, John. I enjoy serving with you in the state Senate. You set a good standard, and I enjoy working with you as we work on conservative and principle-based legislation.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things. I mean, the last 4 years we've had record tax cuts that you've been involved in, and a lot going on though along those lines. Do you hear much? Do people recognize that we've been cutting taxes, or what are you hearing from people as you go door to door?
I've visited a lot of my district, and I'm hearing a lot either in person or an email, or somebody will visit me in the grocery store and say, "Hey, Wayne, can we chat for a minute?" And I enjoy that. I enjoy talking with people and working with them on their issues. But they come up and they're really concerned with a couple things. Taxes is a big one. They recognize the fact that, yes, we're working on it, but I don't think they realize how much we've actually done. When you go back to 2007, we had a state tax rate of 7%. Okay. Now in this last session, the state income tax rate is 4.55%. And that's for business and for families. And that's a huge savings for people. That's in the billions of dollars that we've been able to save people, while at the same time investing a record amount of money into education and in infrastructure. One of the things that I've gotten over the years is the fact, and you've heard this as well, is that we tax military retirement income. We used to do that, that's correct, but not now.
We eliminated that.
A couple years ago, I ran the bill that exempted military retirement income for our veterans who served and protected this country for oh so many years. It's now exempt from state income tax.
Oh, that's right. That was your bill.
And I am very proud and honored to have run that bill.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that we've got the seniors, and the seniors are out there, and most of them are on fixed income. A lot of them, their big chunk of their retirement savings and their monthly income is from Social Security retirement. 3 years ago, I ran a bill to go through and increase the amount of Social Security retirement income that's exempt from state income tax. Last year, we ran a bill that really increased that amount. We've got,
So now under that latest bill, it's now $75,000.
It's now $75,000. So if you make under $75,000 in retirement, then you get a cut in your state income tax that's responsible and applicable to that Social Security retirement income. My goal, and as I have a bill file open to do it, is we need to go through and exempt also all of Social Security retirement income, because otherwise we may be forcing some of our seniors into making decisions that they shouldn't have to do on what do they buy or what do they pay for. Do they pay their taxes, or do they get some food or be able to do go on a little trip or something like that? Nothing big, but I think it's really important that we exempt all Social Security retirement income.
Yeah, because that marginal tax rate is pretty high when you go over that level and have to start drawing your minimum distributions from your 401k. If you're just drawing a little bit, if that pushes you over that level, that's a pretty high tax rate.
It goes up to 4.55%, but that's still a big hit to people who are on fixed income. So that's something that I think is really important that we continue to address. And we've been very successful, as you know, as a legislature in increasing the exemption amount and allowing people to keep more of their hard-earned money, even if it's the retirement. Yeah. They paid into it for oh so many years. Now they need to have.
So you've actually got a bill file then on that.
I do.
To finish that off, right? Because I think when I went in the legislature, I don't remember what it was before, but it's gone from like 30-something thousand to 75,000.
It was about 26,000 before you came in. Then went up to 30-some-odd thousand, and then I think it was about 40, and now we took it to 75,000, and that's a big one. And people haven't seen that yet because it kicks in this year. And so when you file taxes in 2025 for the 2024 year, you will see that tax relief for the people who are eligible for it. And I want to make sure that everybody gets the full break that they should have.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess the other area of taxation that seniors are worried about is with property taxes, right?
Yeah, and as I go around, the number one is what's happening with inflation, which is unfortunately a federal issue. We're trying, and we'll maybe talk about that later, but that's something we have to deal with. But property tax. We have, over the years, the state imposes a state basic minimum levy that is used for equalization on the property tax for low taxable rate districts, especially like Rich or Wayne or San Juan, that are mostly owned by the federal government. They don't have much land to tax. So we'll do that. But we have reduced our rate in order to lower that. The rest of the money is imposed by cities, counties, school districts. And I'm working with a bunch of stakeholders this year, again, on another bill file that we're studying this summer to see how can we bring a little bit more stability, reliability, and transparency to that process and make sure that people aren't taxed out of their homes.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's an issue that really does affect seniors right there. And I know we've got further things to work on there. One of the things I hear from a lot of seniors is they say, well, because of inflation, my property has gone up in value, and so my taxes have gone up. And under our truth and taxation law, that if the property value goes up, the tax rate has to come down, unless the local government holds a truth and taxation hearing, right? And so people have to be notified that, I heard from a lot of cities and stuff that they put out this statement that said they're going to hold the rate, which makes people think they're not going to raise taxes. But if you hold the rate and all the property's gone up in value, that means they're going to tax you more, right?
Yeah, and you've described that exactly correct. And everybody needs to go through and have the adequate funds for paving roads on a city or going through and funding education properly. We've done a lot, as a state to go through and fund education, but at the same time, if you raise your property taxes 26%, I don't know if anybody in your district who likely got a 26% increase in their income.
Yeah.
So it cuts everybody backwards, and it's not as family friendly as we have. So again, I'm working with a number of stakeholders to see what we can do to stabilize that and make it more fair and equitable.
Yeah, I know we had a bill last year. Senator Wilson ran on better defining this truth and taxation law and putting additional constraints on there, so that that people at least understand if their taxes are going to be raised, they can show up at a hearing and make sure that local cities or counties don't increase their taxes.
Yeah, and I actually ran a bill a few years ago to go through and improve the county assessment, collecting, and levy process. We found out last year, unfortunately, that there's a handful of counties who are not following that law. So we had constituents in 4 or 5 counties who actually had 100% on up to, I had one constituent that had a 1,500% increase in property tax because the county assessor had not followed the law and had not done the appraisal and assessment and the required changes in the taxes. I mean, it should have gone up a little bit because of truth and taxation from what local entities had done, but not like that. Nobody wants to go through and say, hey, I paid $2,500 for about 14 years. His tax bill came in at $14,700 last fall. Who saves up that much money? The taxpayer just trusts that what they get is actually accurate.
Yeah. Well, under that law, taxes have to be fair and equitable. Yeah. So they have to be spread among everybody.
So I've got a bill, and I've been working with the County Assessors Association with the State Tax Commission to make sure that everybody uses the proper assessment collecting system and that all of the reappraisals are done on an annual basis and the 5-year reassessment happens as it should. So we should not see any more of that in the future. It'll help, families and retired people plan for the future.
Well, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Greetings, I'm Wayne Harper, and I'm seeking re-election as your Utah State Senator for our District 16. I'm thrilled to share that I've earned the endorsements from esteemed organizations like the Fraternal Order of Police, the Utah Professional Firefighters, and both chiefs of police from West Jordan and Taylorsville cities. With experience comes effective leadership, and I humbly request your support in the upcoming Republican primary election on June 25th.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We've got Wayne Harper here, Senator Wayne Harper from District 16.
Thank you.
Up for re-election.
Yes.
And so, I'm hearing, you chair transportation, right?
Yes.
And you've had a lot of experience with transportation. And so, one thing I'm hearing is people are saying that you had increased taxes, but as I recall, there was a bill to actually reduce motor fuel tax.
Yeah. Back in 2015, we ran a bill that indexed motor fuel tax for inflation. Okay, we realized that there were a lot of different things, and that was at the same time we're starting to see the electric vehicles and their impact. We adjusted registration fees to make sure everybody's paying their fair share of road usage. But last year, Representative Schultz, then he was the majority leader, and I ran a bill to go through and actually reduce the tax on motor fuels. It was about a $32 million tax cut in the transportation fund, recognizing that people needed a break for several years, and we just adjusted that, making it much more fair. Now, as we talk about transportation as well, you and I know that we get calls all the time here. There's this overpass isn't good, this pothole isn't fixed. What can we do to get more lanes on the freeway or that? As the chair of the Transportation Committee for a number of years, I've successfully led the process to reevaluate how we go through and fund transportation, and given the commission and the professional staff the ability to go through and actually have a criteria for prioritizing transportation projects. This prioritization process is very critical, because then the money will go through and fund exactly the roads that people are saying need to be fixed, need to be widened, need to be improved. We've gone through and the Transportation Commission has created a list saying, here's the projects that we're going to do over the next 7 years. And then they allow the legislature to look at and say, yeah, that's right, and they'll tell us how much money we need, and we'll go through and reallocate funding. We really don't raise taxes in that area. It comes in through the natural growth in the motor fuel tax and in registration fees, because we get more and more cars on the road, and more of those are being registered. So it's a fairly good process. One thing that we've done, which we're becoming the leader in the country, is we're taking a look and saying, okay, how do we go through and deal with transit? We've had some challenges with UTA along the Wasatch Front. They've been reorganized. They've created a better funding process within their program internally, and they've also created a prioritized list. And they're partnering now with Utah in order to go through and figure out how to better do capital development at a more responsive, a cheaper, and a more effective way. So we're doing that. The other thing that we're doing is we've created a rural transportation investment fund. So it's not just the Wasatch Front that's seeing the benefit of the growth in transportation funds, but now rural Utah, because as you know, that's where we go through and play, and they need to have the roads and the systems therein, and we help them out. And we also are looking at active transportation, so people can have a choice of how they want to go through and get to work, get to the store, play, whatever. I think it's really good to give people options.
Now, how long have you worked with transportation? How long have you chaired that committee?
Transportation, I've chaired it did a few years in the House. It's been the last 6 years in the Senate.
6 years you've, because that's a fairly complicated process, yeah. And I know your experience is crucial there, right, for the Senate. So.
Yeah, the experience does count. And before I chaired transportation, I chaired the Infrastructure and General Government Committee, which was the appropriations committee over roads and buildings. And we created a much more transparent and better process for prioritizing what we're going to do for buildings and with roads. So, yeah, the experience is critical there. People classify me as the state leader in transportation, and I'm honored to go through and help people figure out how to resolve their transportation problems wherever they are in the state.
So that's a real benefit in your area, especially, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's crucial in some of the, in Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City. There's a big issue there with transportation.
Right. And in the Southwest Quadrant, we have a lot of growth. That's where the growth is happening in Salt Lake County, Taylorsville, West Jordan, Harriman, Riverton, Bluffdale, that area, West Valley. And we don't have adequate roads. But we've done a lot with Bangor Highway, Mountain View Corridor, improving 5400 South, 90 South, 134 South, 104 South. So we are improving east-west as well as north-south, so people are not waiting for 4 or 5 stoplights to get through.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't understand is that in something like that, it really takes someone that has a long horizon, that's looking down the road, right? Down the road,
yes.
Right?
Very good. I like that
Yeah.
one. So yes, the experience and then the vision and knowing who to work with and how to do it, not just on the state level, but our partners are counties, our partners are cities, and our partners are also the federal government, because there's federal transportation funds that are there that we pay through via our motor fuel tax, and those are relegated back to us in funding. And we work with good people like we have in Congress and the U.S. Senate in order to make sure we get our funds back that we put into that system.
Very good. So let's go back to this idea of experience again. I want you to brag just a little bit because you do have a lot of experience in many issues. What are some of the other issues do you think that you're particularly proud of us moving forward?
I was honored to serve for a term on the West Jordan City Council. I learned a whole bunch about local city issues, priorities of neighbors, and those people continue to contact me. But on the experience, as you know, the longer that you're in, it's not just you're in it for yourself. You're in it, and I'm in it for service. I've learned what my community and my neighbors' priorities are. I've learned that when somebody calls me up and say, hey, I need a passport quickly because of this situation, how do I do it? Well, we don't deal with passports.
Right.
I know who to call in our congressional delegation or our senatorial delegation. Somebody will go through and say, hey, I have this agency in the Department of Commerce that's coming after me because I didn't do X. And I didn't even know I had to file that form. And so I will go through and work with that business. I'll say, okay, let's meet with and contact the agency, and let's walk through this to make sure that the laws are being complied with. But you're not penalized for not knowing. It's a kind of a lot of hand-holding, and I love to do that. I've worked with people having trouble with the Labor Commission. I've helped families who are having trouble with Child Protective Services for wrongful allegations. I've helped teachers who said, what do I do because I'm paying a lot of stuff out of pocket for my supplies for my classroom. And we've gone through and we've changed our funding program to go through and say, okay, here is what an elementary school teacher, gets in additional money for classroom supplies. Here's a middle school, here's a high school. Just working through that. And sometimes we'll get, and you'll know this, we'll get groups that'll come to us and say, hey, we want this. And it'll only take this little tweak. Well, somebody that hasn't been there for a little while doesn't know that we've eliminated a number of programs because they weren't effective, or they were federally mandated and the federal funds dried up, and there are programs that we didn't value, so we've eliminated those programs. Some people want those to come back, and we've made a choice, a conservative choice, not to go through and do that. Somebody new coming in won't know all that history.
Well, I appreciate your work. I know, whenever I look at conservative policies, you're always right there with me, and helping move those forward. The last thing I wanted to ask you about is this federal overreach. A lot of people I've talked to are worried about the federal government imposing more and more on us. And, this last session, we pushed back pretty hard against federal overreach with in terms of energy and other things. What would you like to highlight out of those things?
That John is a very good point. The federal overreach is something I hear when I go door to door. People email me. We are being burdened and buried with trillions of dollars of federal debt. We've gone through and that's being passed on to our children, our grandchildren, now our great-grandchildren. We've got to stop that because, as you remember, under the 10th Amendment, the powers that are not specifically delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and the people, and we need to keep up with the people. We did pass, Senator Sendell passed a bill, ran a bill, and we voted on it to make sure that we can start curtailing federal overreach. I am very concerned with executive orders because I think executive orders bypass the constitutional authority of Congress to go through and make laws and policies. Those things and some of the other things of what federal agencies are coming in and saying, hey, and it's going to be interesting under the case dealing with the Chevron doctrine of how much of the federal overreach will go through and continue or how much it'll be curtailed. I'm hoping that we can start really responding back. I love Senator Sandals' bill and a couple others that really were giving the AG and other groups the authority to take a look at everything that comes down from the federal government and says, is it constitutional? Did Congress go through
Does it violate the 10th Amendment?
Yeah, does it do that? And we are starting to rein those items in.
Well, people don't recognize in the state that, when we talk about education funding and we talk about taxes and property taxes, we could significantly reduce the property taxes in the state if we could start better taxing the property that's owned by the federal government, owned and controlled.
Yeah,
right?
They've got about 68% of the entire state they control. And they're supposed to be doing the PILT, payments in lieu of taxes. We sometimes get those, and when we do, they're pennies on the dollar.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff that we have to work on, and we will continue to work on in order to make sure that Utah maintains its position as the best state, the most fiscally responsible state in the nation, and one that every other state looks to for guidance and help.
Well, I appreciate your leadership on these things. We're out of time, so why don't you make a pitch to the voters?
Okay. Well, thank you. It's been my honor and my privilege to serve you these last 12 years as your state senator. I would ask for your vote again so that we might continue working together, that I can be your champion on Capitol Hill, and that we can work together on taxes, funding education, improving transportation, and continuing to make Utah the best place in the state, in the nation to be.
Thank you very much. Wayne Harper.
Okay.